The day has done all it needs to do. Now only stillness remains. Let your thoughts loosen, like threads unraveling in the dark. What comes next is not to solve or to chase, just a quiet story drifting close. Perhaps it's a voice that remembers you, or a silence that has waited patiently. Let it meet you where you are, and let it lead you gently into rest. In the dusty heart of Willow Creek, where the wind carried whispers of forgotten gold rushes, stood an old boarding house, its wood creaking under the weight of time. The townsfolk called it the Gray Mare, though no one could recall why. Its windows were clouded with grime, and the porch sagged like an old man's shoulders. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of mildew and something sweeter, like faded roses. This was where Clara Dunn arrived, her boots kicking up red dirt as she stepped off the stagecoach, a single leather satchel in hand. Clara was 27, with sharp green eyes and hair, the color of a desert sunset. She'd come to Willow Creek, chasing a rumor, a mirror, they said, tucked away in the gray mare that showed more than a reflection. It showed him. No one could agree on who he was. Some said a miner who died in a cave-in, others a gambler shot over a bad hand. Clara didn't care for the details. She'd spent years running from her own ghost debts, broken promises, a father who drank himself into oblivion. The mirror was her chance at something new, something that might finally quiet the ache in her chest. The boarding house keeper, Mrs. Hargrove, was a wiry woman with a face like cracked leather. "Rooms upstairs, third on the left," she said, sliding a key across the counter. Her eyes lingered on Clara, as if measuring her. "You here for the mirror?" Clara nodded, keeping her expression neutral. Mrs. Hargrove snorted. "Folks come, folks go. Ain't none of 'em found peace in that glass." She turned away, muttering about fools and their fancies. Clara climbed the narrow stairs, each step groaning underfoot. The hallway was dim, lit only by a single oil lamp that flickered like it was fighting to stay awake. Her room was small, with a lumpy bed, a washstand, and a window that rattled in its frame. She set her satchel down and caught her reflection in a cracked mirror on the wall. Not the mirror, just a plain one. Her face looked tired, older than she remembered. She turned away, unwilling to linger on herself. That night she lay awake, listening to the wind howl outside. Willow Creek was a town that felt half asleep, caught between the living and the dead. She'd heard the stories in the saloon on her way and tales of strange lights in the hills, of voices calling from empty streets. Clara wasn't one for superstition, but something about the Gray Mare felt heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath. She closed her eyes, willing sleep to come, but her thoughts kept drifting to the mirror. Was it real? Could it show her what she needed to see? The next morning she explored the boarding house. The parlor was cluttered with faded photographs and chipped porcelain, relics of a livelier time. In the corner, behind a velvet curtain, she found it, the mirror. It was tall, its frame carved with vines that seemed to twist in the light. The glass was unnaturally clear, almost liquid, reflecting the room with a clarity that made her skin prickle. She stepped closer, her breath catching. Her reflection stared back, but for a moment, just a flicker, she thought she saw something else. A shadow. A shape. Not her. Clara blinked, and it was gone. Her heart thudded, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Just a trick of the light," she muttered, though her voice sounded thin in the empty room. She reached out, her fingers hovering over the glass, but didn't touch it. Not yet. She wasn't ready. Instead, she pulled the curtain back over the mirror and left the parlor, her steps quicker than she intended. Back in her room, she found a small journal tucked under the pillow, its pages yellowed and brittle. The handwriting was faded, but legible. Eleanor, 1879, it read on the first page. Clara frowned. Eleanor who? The entries were short, fragmented notes about dreams, about a man's face in the mirror, about a promise that couldn't be kept. Clara's pulse quickened as she read. Whoever Eleanor was, she'd been here, in this house, chasing the same mystery. And she hadn't left happy. Clara closed the journal, her mind racing. The mirror wasn't just a story, it was a pull, a current dragging people in. She wasn't sure if she believed in ghosts, but she believed in want. She wanted answers. She wanted to know who he was. And deep down, in a place she didn't like to look, she wanted to know if the mirror could show her a way out of herself. As night fell, Clara sat on her bed, the journal in her lap. The house was quiet, save for the occasional creak or sigh of settling wood. She thought of Eleanor, of the mirror, of the shadow she'd seen, or thought she'd seen. Tomorrow she'd face the glass again. Tomorrow she'd be braver. For now, she let the journal fall closed and blew out the candle, letting the darkness settle over her like a blanket. Clara woke to the sound of a distant bell, its toll faint and mournful, drifting through the pre-dawn haze. She lay still, her breath shallow, trying to place it. Willow Creek had no church steeple, no clock tower she'd seen. The sound faded, leaving only the creak of the gray Mare's old bones. She sat up, her eyes adjusting to the dim light filtering through the window. The journal still lay on the bed, its cover cool under her fingers. Eleanor's words lingered in her mind like a half-remembered dream. She dressed quickly, pulling on her boots and a shawl against a morning chill. The boarding house was silent as she slipped into the hallway, the oil lamp now burned out. Her footsteps echoed softly as she made her way to the parlor. The velvet curtain hung heavy, undisturbed. Clara hesitated, her hand hovering over it. The memory of that flicker in the mirror, the shadow that wasn't hers, made her stomach twist. But she hadn't come this far to turn back. She pulled the curtain aside. The mirror stood as it had before, its glass catching the faint light like a still pond. Clara stepped closer, her reflection sharp and unyielding. She studied herself, the faint lines around her eyes, the tightness in her jaw. "Show me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Show me him." The glass remained unchanged, mocking her with her own face. She leaned in, her breath fogging the surface, and for a moment she thought she saw it again, a shift, a blur, like someone standing just behind her. She spun around, heart pounding, but the parlor was empty. "Foolishness," she muttered, rubbing her arms. But she didn't leave. She stood there, staring into the mirror, willing it to give her something more. Minutes passed, maybe longer. The house seemed to hold its breath with her. Then a sound, a soft thud, like a book falling. It came from upstairs. Clara tore her eyes from the mirror and hurried out of the parlor, her boots loud against the floorboards. Back in her room, she found the journal on the floor, open to a new page. She hadn't left it like that. Her pulse quickened as she picked it up. The handwriting was Eleanor's, but the ink looked fresh, impossibly so. He watches, but he cannot speak. Not yet? Clara's hands trembled as she read. The words felt like a warning, or maybe a plea. She snapped the journal shut and shoved it into her satchel, her mind racing. Was someone playing a trick? Mrs. Hargrove? Another guest? But the house felt too empty for pranks. Downstairs, she found Mrs. Hargrove in the kitchen, stirring a pot of porridge. The old woman glanced up, her eyes narrowing. "You look like you've seen something," she said, her voice dry as dust. Clara forced a smile. "Just couldn't sleep." "That mirror, does it ever show anything?" Mrs. Hargrove's spoon paused mid-stir. "Depends on what you're looking for. Some see nothing, some see too much." She turned back to her pot, dismissing Clara with a grunt. Clara wandered into the dining room, where a man sat alone, nursing a cup of coffee. He was lean, with dark hair and a jawline that could cut glass. His eyes, a deep hazel, flicked up as she entered. "Mornin'," he said, his voice low and smooth. "You're new." Clara nodded, taking a seat across from him. "Clara Dunn?" "Just passing through." He smiled, a slow, knowing curve of his lips. "Jasper Tate. And nobody just passes through Willow Creek. You're here for the mirror, ain't you?" She stiffened, but his tone held no mockery, only curiosity. "Heard about it," she admitted. Jasper leaned back, his fingers tracing the rim of his cup. "Folks say it shows a man's face. Some poor soul who never left this place. Me, I think it's just glass. But it's got a way of pulling people in." He studied her, his gaze lingering a little too long. "Careful, Miss Dunn. Things like that can make you forget why you came." Clara felt a flush creep up her neck, but she held his stare. "I'm not here to forget." Jasper's smile widened, but he said nothing more, only sipped his coffee. She excused herself, her thoughts tangled. Jasper was trouble, she could tell, too charming, too easy with his words. But he knew something about the mirror, or at least pretended to. She'd keep an eye on him. Back in her room, she pulled out the journal again. The new entry was still there, the ink dark and clear. She read it over, her unease growing. Eleanor, whoever she was, had seen something in that mirror, something that had marked her. Clara thought of the shadow, the bell, the journal's impossible words. She wasn't sure what she believed, but she felt the pull of the mirror stronger now, like a tide dragging her out to sea. That afternoon, she walked into town, hoping to clear her head. Willow Creek was a scatter of weathered buildings, their paint peeling under the relentless sun. In the general store, she overheard two old men talking about the gray Mare. "That place ain't right," one said, his voice low. "My cousin stayed there once. Said he saw a man in the mirror, clear as day. Left the next morning and never came back." The other man shook his head. "It's just stories. Ain't no ghost in that glass." But his eyes darted nervously, like he didn't quite believe his own words. Clara bought a tin of biscuits and headed back, the men's words echoing in her mind. The mirror was more than a rumor, it was a weight, a presence that clung to the town like dust. She thought of Jasper's warning, of Mrs. Hargrove's cryptic mutterings, and Eleanor. Always Eleanor, her journal a breadcrumb trail, leading somewhere Clara wasn't sure she wanted to go. As dusk settled over the gray Mare, Clara stood in her room, the journal in her hands. She didn't open it. Instead, she looked at her reflection in the cracked mirror on the wall. Her face was her own, but it felt unfamiliar, like a mask she'd worn too long. Downstairs, the mirror waited. Tomorrow she'd face it again. Tomorrow she'd demand answers. For now, she set the journal aside and let the night close in, heavy and quiet. The morning sun crept through Clara's window, painting the floorboards in soft gold. She hadn't slept well, her dreams tangled with bells and shadows that dissolved when she tried to hold them. The journal lay on the washstand, its presence a quiet weight. She avoided it, splashing cold water on her face and braiding her hair with quick, practiced hands. Today she'd learn more about the mirror, not from whispers or old pages, but from the people who lived in its shadow. Downstairs, the dining room was empty, save for the faint smell of burnt toast. Mrs. Hargrove was nowhere to be seen, but a plate of biscuits sat on the table, already going stale. Clara took one, nibbling as she stepped onto the porch. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of sagebrush and distant wood smoke. Willow Creek stirred slowly, a few figures moving along the dusty street. A woman with a basket, a man leading a mule. Clara's eyes drifted to the hills beyond, where the old mines lay silent, their secrets buried in collapsed shafts. She headed to the saloon, figuring it was the best place to hear the town's pulse. The swinging doors creaked as she entered, drawing a few curious glances from the men hunched over their drinks. The bartender, a broad man with a scarred cheek, nodded as she approached. "Coffee," Clara said, sliding a coin across the counter. He poured her a cup, black and bitter, and leaned forward. "You're staying at the Gray Mare," he said, not a question. Clara raised an eyebrow. "Word travels fast." He shrugged. "Small town. You here for that mirror?" Clara sipped her coffee, letting the question hang. "What's the story with it?" she asked finally. The bartender wiped a glass, his movements slow. "Depends who you ask. Some say it's cursed, tied to a man who died bad. Others say it's just a fancy piece of glass messing with folks' heads. Me, I stay clear of it. Ain't no good comes from staring too long." He glanced at her, his eyes sharp. "You seen anything yet?" Clara shook her head, keeping her face blank. "Just my own reflection." A man at the end of the bar chuckled, his voice rough with whiskey. "That's how it starts, missy. First it's you, then it ain't." He was older, his hat stained with sweat, his fingers gnarled around the bottle. Clara turned to him. "You know something about it?" He squinted at her, then beckoned her closer. "Name's Amos. Used to work the mines. Stayed at the Gray Mare one winter, about 10 years back. Saw him in that mirror clear as I see you now. Young fella, sad eyes. Looked like he wanted to say something, but his mouth wouldn't move." Clara's pulse quickened, but she kept her voice steady. "Who was he?" Amos shrugged. "Do you know? Never saw him again, but I left the next day. Felt like he was still watching me." He drained his bottle and stood, swaying slightly. "You be careful, girl. That mirror don't give answers, it takes 'em." He stumbled out, leaving Clara with a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. She finished her coffee and left the saloon, her thoughts buzzing. Amos's story matched Eleanor's journal's sad eyes, a man who couldn't speak. But it was too vague, too slippery. She needed more. As she walked back to the Gray Mare, she spotted Jasper Tate leaning against a hitching post, his hat tipped low. He straightened when he saw her, that slow smile curling his lips. "Mornin', Miss Dunn. Out hunting ghosts?" Clara crossed her arms, not in the mood for his charm, just getting the lay of the land. "You know a man named Amos? Old miner drinks at the Saloon?" Jasper's smile faded slightly. "Yeah, I know Amos. Tells that mirror story to anyone who'll listen. Half the town thinks he's crazy, other half thinks he's drunk." "Why? He spin you a tale?" Clara nodded, watching his reaction. "Said he saw a man in the mirror. You ever hear anything like that?" Jasper's eyes flicked away just for a moment before meeting hers again. "Stories mostly. Folks see what they want to see. Me, I've looked in that mirror plenty. Ain't never seen nothin' but my own face." He stepped closer, his voice lowering. "But I'll tell you this, people who chase that mirror end up chasing themselves. You sure you want to keep going?" Clara felt a spark of irritation. "I'm sure I don't need your advice, Mr. Tate." His smile returned, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Fair enough. Just don't say I didn't warn you." She brushed past him, her boots kicking up dust. Jasper's words stung, but they also lit a fire in her. He was hiding something. She could feel it in the way his gaze lingered, the way his voice dipped. Back at the gray Mare, she found Mrs. Hargrove sweeping the porch. "You know anything about a woman named Eleanor?" Clara asked, keeping her tone casual. Mrs. Hargrove's broom paused. "Eleanor? Ain't heard that name in years. She stayed here long time ago. Quiet type, always writin' in a little book. Left sudden like. Why you a skin?" Clara's heart skipped. "Just heard her name in town," she lied. Mrs. Hargrove's eyes narrowed, but she only nodded and went back to her sweeping. Clara climbed the stairs to her room, her mind racing. Eleanor had been real, not just a ghost in a journal. And she'd left suddenly. Why? Clara pulled the journal from her satchel, flipping to the new entry. "He watches, but he cannot speak." "Not yet." She traced the words, her unease growing. Was Eleanor still here, somehow leaving messages? Or was the mirror playing tricks? That night, Clara sat by her window, the journal unopened. The bell tolled again, fainter this time, like a memory fading. She thought of Amos's story, of Jasper's warning, of Eleanor's cryptic words. The mirror was a puzzle, and she was caught in its pieces. She glanced at the cracked mirror on the wall, half expecting to see something else. But it was just her tired, determined, alone. She blew out the candle, letting the darkness settle, but sleep felt far away. The mirror waited downstairs, and she knew she'd face it again soon. Too soon. The air in the gray Mare felt heavier that morning, as if the house itself were pressing down on Clara's shoulders. She woke early, her dreams a blur of mirrors and half-seen faces, the distant bell still ringing in her ears. She dressed in silence, her fingers lingering on the journal before tucking it into her satchel. She wasn't ready to read more, not yet. The mirror was calling, and she couldn't ignore it any longer. Today she'd face it properly, no hesitation. Downstairs the parlor was empty, the velvet curtain undisturbed. Clara pulled it back, letting the morning light spill across the mirror's surface. It gleamed flawless and cold, reflecting her in sharp detail, her green eyes, her tense jaw, the faint freckles across her nose. She stepped closer, her boots soft against the warm rug. "All right," she whispered, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. "Show me something. Anything." The glass stayed silent, her reflection unwavering. She leaned in, her nose inches from the surface, searching for that flicker she'd seen before. Minutes passed. Her breath fogged the glass, then cleared. Nothing. Frustration welled up, hot and sharp. "Come on," she muttered, her fingers curling into fists. She was about to turn away when it happened. A ripple, like water disturbed by a stone. Her reflection blurred, and for a heartbeat, she saw him. A man's face, young, with dark hair and eyes that carried a weight she couldn't name. His lips parted, as if to speak, but no sound came. Then he was gone, and it was just Clara again, staring wide-eyed at herself. Her heart hammered as she stumbled back, her heel catching on the rug. She steadied herself against a chair, her breath ragged. It was real. Not a trick, not her imagination. She'd seen him, just as Amos had, just as Eleanor's journal described. Her mind raced, piecing together fragments, the bell, the journal, the shadow, and the glass. Who was he? Why was he trapped there? She needed answers, but the mirror offered none, its surface calm and mocking. Clara left the parlor, her thoughts a jumble. She found Mrs. Hargrove in the kitchen, kneading dough with rough, deliberate hands. "You ever see anything in that mirror?" Clara asked, her voice sharper than she intended. Mrs. Hargrove didn't look up. "Told you before, girl. Depends on what you're looking for." Clara pressed on. "A man? Young, dark hair, sad eyes. You know who he is?" The old woman's hands stilled, just for a moment. "Lots of men passed through here. Miners, drifters, fools. Could be any of them." Her tone was flat, but her eyes flicked to Clara, wary. Clara didn't push further. Mrs. Hargrove was holding something back, but prying would get her nowhere. Instead, she stepped outside, needing air. The street was quiet, the sun climbing higher, casting long shadows from the sagging buildings. She spotted Jasper Tate across the way, talking to a woman in a faded blue dress. The woman was gesturing animatedly, her voice too low to catch. Jasper glanced up, saw Clara, and gave a small nod before turning back to the woman. Clara's stomach twisted. Was he digging into the mirror's story too? Or was he just playing his own game? She walked toward the edge of town, where the land opened into scrub and rocky hills. The mines were out there, abandoned now, their entrances boarded up like sealed graves. She'd heard the stories' cave-ins, men lost to greed or bad luck. Maybe the man in the mirror was one of them, a miner who never made it out. The thought sent a shiver through her, but it felt too simple, too neat. The mirror wasn't just a ghost story. It was something deeper, something that pulled at her in ways she couldn't explain. Back at the gray Mare, Clara sat on her bed, the journal in her lap. She opened it, her fingers trembling slightly. A new entry waited, the ink fresh as before. "He sees you now. Be careful what you ask." Clara's breath caught. The words felt like a hand on her shoulder, gentle but firm. She slammed the journal shut, her pulse racing. This wasn't Eleanor's doing, not anymore. Something else was at work, something tied to the mirror, to the man she'd seen. She thought of his eyes, the way they'd seemed to plead, to reach for her. That evening she found Jasper in the dining room, alone with a glass of whiskey. He looked up as she entered, his smile softer than usual. "You look spooked," he said, leaning back in his chair. Clara sat across from him, her hands clasped tight. "I saw him," she said quietly, "in the mirror." Just for a second, Jasper's expression didn't change, but his fingers tightened around his glass. "Did you now?" His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. "What did he look like?" Clara described the man: dark hair, sad eyes, a face that seemed to carry a story he couldn't tell. Jasper listened, his gaze steady but unreadable. When she finished, he took a slow sip of his drink. "Sounds like you got what you came for," he said. "Question is, what now?" Clara shook her head. "I don't know, but I'm not leaving until I understand." Jasper leaned forward, his voice low. "Careful, Clara. That mirror's got a way of keeping folks here. You might not walk away so easy." His words hung between them, heavy as the air in the gray Mare. Clara wanted to snap back, to tell him she wasn't afraid, but the truth was she was. Not of the man in the mirror, but of what he might mean, what he might ask of her. She excused herself, her steps heavy as she climbed the stairs. In her room, she sat by the window, the journal untouched. The bell tolled again, faint and far, like a heartbeat in the dark. She closed her eyes, trying to shut it out, but the man's face lingered, etched behind her lids. The mirror was waiting, and she knew she'd return to it. Tomorrow or the day after. It wasn't done with her yet. Clara stood at her window, the dawn light casting a pale glow over Willow Creek. Sleep had eluded her, the man's face from the mirror lingering like a melody she couldn't shake. His eyes dark, heavy with something unsaid, felt like they'd reached into her, stirring a restlessness she didn't understand. The journal sat on the washstand, its new entry burning in her memory. "He sees you now. Be careful what you ask." She hadn't touched it since last night, afraid of what else it might say. She dressed slowly, her movements deliberate, as if preparing for battle. The mirror was no longer just a curiosity, it was a door, and she'd cracked it open. Today she'd push further, but not alone. She needed to know what others in the gray Mare knew, what secrets they carried. Mrs. Hargrove's evasions, Jasper's cryptic warnings, they were pieces of a puzzle, and Clara was determined to fit them together. In the dining room, she found Jasper already seated, his coffee steaming. He looked up, his hazel eyes catching the light. "Mornin', Clara. Still chasing shadows?" His tone was light, but there was a tension in his jaw. Clara sat across from him, her hands folded. "I'm chasing truth," she said evenly. "You've been here longer than me. What do you know about that mirror?" Jasper leaned back, his fingers drumming softly on the table. "I know it's old. Older than this house, maybe. Came from some fancy estate back east, they say. Beyond that, it's just stories." Clara narrowed her eyes. "You're holding back." "I saw him, Jasper. I know you've heard more than you're letting on." He held her gaze, his smile fading. For a moment, she thought he'd brush her off again, but he sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "All right. There's a name that comes up sometimes, Nathaniel. Folks say he was a miner, worked the hills round here, died young, something about a broken heart. Some think he's the one in the mirror, but that's all I got. Stories, not facts. Nathaniel." The name settled in Clara's chest, heavy and familiar, though she couldn't say why. "Why a broken heart?" she asked. Jasper shrugged, but his eyes didn't leave hers. Dunno. Love's a dangerous thing out here. Makes folks do crazy things." His voice softened, and Clara felt a flush creep up her neck. She looked away, breaking the moment. "Thanks," she said, standing. "I'll figure out the rest." She headed to the parlor, her thoughts spinning. Nathaniel. A miner, a broken heart. It fit the man. She'd seen those sad eyes, that silent plea. But why her? Why now? The mirror stood waiting, its glass gleaming in the morning light. Clara didn't approach it, not yet. Instead, she wandered the house, searching for anything that might tie to Nathaniel. In a dusty corner of the upstairs hallway, she found a framed photograph, its edges curling with age. A group of men, miners by their clothes, stood in front of a rocky hill. One of them, young, dark-haired, with a faint smile, looked eerily like the man in the mirror. Clara's breath caught. She lifted the frame, her fingers brushing the glass. Was this him? There were no names, no dates, just the faded image of men long gone. She tucked the frame under her arm and kept searching, her steps quickening. In a storage room, she found a box of old letters, their ink faded but legible. Most were mundane supply orders, complaints about the weather, but one caught her eye. It was addressed to "My dearest Anne," unsigned, and spoke of a promise to meet at the old oak by the creek. The writer begged forgiveness for some unnamed wrong. Clara's pulse raced. Was this Nathaniel's story, hidden in scraps of the past? She returned to her room, the photograph and letter in hand. The journal waited, and this time she opened it. Another entry, fresh as before. He waits for her still. The oak remembers. Clara's hands trembled. The oak by the creek, could it be the same one? She thought of the gnarled tree she'd passed on her walk to town, its branches heavy with time. Was it a clue or another pull into the mirror's game? She closed the journal, her mind a storm of questions. That afternoon she walked to the creek, the letter tucked in her pocket. The oak stood alone, its roots twisting into the earth like veins. Clara ran her hand over its bark, searching for something initials, a carving, anything. She found nothing, but the air felt thick, like the tree itself was watching. She sat at its base, the letter in her lap, and read it again. The words felt alive, full of longing and regret. Whoever wrote it had loved Nathaniel, and that love had broken them both. Back at the gray Mare, Clara found Mrs. Hargrove in the kitchen. "You ever hear of a miner named Nathaniel?" she asked, keeping her voice casual. Mrs. Hargrove's knife paused mid-chop. "Old name, that one. Heard it once or twice. Died in the mines, they say. Sad story, but ain't they all?" She resumed chopping, but her hands moved faster, betraying her unease. Clara didn't press. Mrs. Hargrove knew more, but she'd only give it up when cornered. As night fell, Clara sat on her bed, the photograph beside her. The man's face, Nathaniel's, she was sure stared back, his smile faint but real. She thought of the mirror, of his eyes pleading across time. What did he want? Forgiveness? Release? And why was she the one to see him? The bell tolled again, soft and distant, like a call she couldn't ignore. She blew out her candle, the darkness wrapping around her, but sleep was a stranger. The mirror waited downstairs, and Nathaniel's story was pulling her closer, step by step, into its heart. Clara woke to a stillness that felt unnatural, as if the gray Mare itself were holding its breath. The bell hadn't tolled last night, and its absence left her uneasy, like a song cut off mid-note. She dressed quickly, her eyes lingering on the photograph of the miners, Nathaniel's faint smile pulling at her. The journal, the letter, the oak by the creek, they were threads, weaving a story she could almost see. Today she'd tug harder, unravel more. Downstairs, the dining room was empty, the air thick with the scent of coffee gone cold. Clara stepped outside, the morning air sharp against her skin. She headed for the saloon, hoping to find Amos, the old miner who'd seen the man in the mirror. His story had been vague, but there was truth in his eyes, a fear that matched her own. The saloon was quiet, save for a few early drinkers. Amos sat in the corner, his hat pulled low, a bottle half empty in front of him. "Mind if I join you?" Clara asked, sliding into the chair across from him. Amos squinted, his face creased like old leather. "You're the girl from the gray Mare. Still poking at that mirror?" Clara nodded, leaning forward. "You said you saw him. A man with sad eyes. I think his name's Nathaniel. You know anything else?" Amos took a slow sip, his hands trembling slightly. "Nathaniel, huh? Rings a bell. Heard whispers about a miner by that name. Loved a girl, they said. Didn't end well. That's all I got." Clara pressed gently. "What happened to the girl?" Amos shrugged, his eyes distant. "Dunno. Left town, maybe. Or worse. Folks don't talk much about it. Too many sad stories round here." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "That mirror, though it ain't just a ghost. It's like it wants something. Felt it watching me, even after I left." Clara's skin prickled. "Wants what?" Amos shook his head. "Ain't my place to say. You keep at it, girl, you'll find out. Or it'll find you." She left the saloon, Amos's words echoing. The mirror wanted something. The journal's warnings, the oak, Nathaniel's face, it all pointed to a story unfinished, a wound unhealed. Clara walked to the creek again, drawn to the old oak. Its branches swayed gently, though there was no wind. She knelt at its base, her fingers brushing the earth. The letter to "My Dearest N" had mentioned this tree, a meeting that never happened. She dug a little, half hoping to find something buried, a token, a clue. Nothing but dirt and roots. Back at the gray Mare, she found Jasper on the porch, whittling a piece of wood into something shapeless. He glanced up, his smile lazy but sharp. "You're looking like you're in deep, Clara." She ignored the tease, sitting beside him. "Tell me about Nathaniel. You said he had a broken heart. Who was the girl?" Jasper's knife paused, a curl of wood falling to the ground. "You don't let up, do you?" "All right. Word is, Nathaniel loved a girl named Lila. She was a singer, performed at the saloon. They were sweet on each other, planning to leave Willow Creek together. Then something happened. Nobody knows what. Nathaniel died, Lila vanished. That's the story." Clara's heart quickened. Lila. The letter, the oak, the promise, it fit. Vanished how? Jasper shrugged, his eyes on his whittling. "Some say she ran off, couldn't take the grief. Others say she never left, just faded. Folks like to talk, but nobody's got proof." He looked at her then, his gaze steady. "You're getting close to something, Clara. I can see it in your eyes." Just hope you're ready for what you find." She stood, her mind racing. Lila. Nathaniel. A love cut short. She went to her room, pulling out the journal. A new entry waited, the ink fresh. She sang for him, but he never came. Clara's breath hitched. The words were a knife, sharp and precise. Lila had been waiting at the oak, singing for Nathaniel, but he'd never shown. Had he died before they could meet? Or was there more? She thought of the photograph, his faint smile. It wasn't just grief in his eyes, it was regret. That evening, Clara returned to the parlor. The mirror stood silent, its glass a pool of light in the dim room. She didn't hesitate this time. She stepped close, her reflection steady but her heart pounding. "Nathaniel," she said softly, testing the name. "I know about Lila. I know she waited." The glass rippled, and there he was, his face clearer now, his eyes locked on hers. His lips moved, forming a word she couldn't hear. "Layla?" Clara leaned closer, her fingers brushing the frame. "What do you want?" she whispered. The mirror went still, her own face staring back. Clara stepped back, her chest tight. He was trying to tell her something, but the glass kept him silent. She thought of the journal, of Amos's fear, of Jasper's story. Lila had vanished, but maybe she hadn't gone far. Maybe she was still here, tied to Nathaniel, to the mirror. Clara's eyes drifted to the velvet curtain, the faded photographs on the walls. The gray Mare was full of ghosts, and she was walking among them. As night settled, Clara sat on her bed, the letter and photograph beside her. The bell tolled again, soft and mournful like a voice calling across time. She closed her eyes, picturing Nathaniel's face, Lila's song, the oak standing alone. The mirror was a bridge, and she was crossing it, step by step. She didn't know what waited on the other side, but she couldn't turn back now. The story was hers to finish, whether she wanted it or not. The gray Mare seemed to hum with a quiet energy that morning, as if it knew Clara was getting closer. She woke with Nathaniel's name on her lips, his face vivid from the mirror's fleeting glimpse. The journal's latest entry, she sang for him, but he never came, felt like a weight in her chest, pulling her toward the truth. Lila's story was tangled with Nathaniel's, and Clara was caught in the threads. She dressed, her hands steady but her mind restless, and tucked the letter and photograph into her satchel. Today she'd dig deeper, no matter what it cost. Downstairs, the dining room was empty, the air stale with yesterday's coffee. Clara skipped breakfast, her focus sharp. She headed to the parlor, where the mirror waited, its glass catching the morning light like a frozen lake. She didn't approach it yet, her courage wavering. Instead, she went to the storage room where she'd found the letters, hoping for more clues. The room was dim, dust motes dancing in slants of light. She rummaged through boxes, finding only faded receipts and a broken pocket watch. Then, tucked in a corner, she spotted a small wooden box, its lid carved with a single initial, L. Clara's breath caught as she opened it. Inside was a delicate silver locket, its chain tarnished but intact. She clicked it open, revealing a tiny portrait of a young woman with soft eyes and a wistful smile. "Layla?" Clara's fingers traced the locket, her heart racing. This was no coincidence. The letter, the oak, the journal all pointed to Lila, and now this. She slipped the locket into her pocket, its weight a quiet promise, and returned to her room. She opened the journal, half dreading what she'd find. A new entry waited, the ink dark and fresh. Her voice is in the glass. Find it. Clara's skin prickled. The words were a command, urgent and clear. She thought of Lila, the singer who'd waited for Nathaniel. Was her voice trapped in the mirror like his face? Clara closed the journal, her resolve hardening. She'd face the mirror again, but first she needed to know more about Lila. She found Mrs. Hargrove in the kitchen, scrubbing a pot with fierce determination. "You ever hear of a singer named Lila?" Clara asked, keeping her tone light. Mrs. Hargrove's hand stilled, her eyes narrowing. "Layla, you say? Long time ago there was a girl who sang at the saloon. Voice like a lark, folks said. Drew a crowd till she stopped coming round. Why you digging up old names?" Clara shrugged, feigning nonchalance. "Just curious. Heard she was tied to Nathaniel." Mrs. Hargrove snorted. "Love stories don't last in Willow Creek. Best leavin' buried." Clara didn't push, but Mrs. Hargrove's reaction confirmed that Lila was real, and her story was no secret, just one the town didn't like to tell. She headed to the saloon, hoping to find more. The bartender was there, polishing glasses with a rag. "You're back," he said, raising an eyebrow. "Still chasing that mirror?" Clara nodded. "Tell me about Lila." "The singer." The bartender's hands slowed. "She was something special. Sang like she was pouring her soul out. Loved a miner, they say. When he died, she broke. Stopped singing, stopped showing up. Nobody knows where she went." Clara's mind spun. Lila had loved Nathaniel, and his death had shattered her. But the journal, the locket, there was more to it. She thanked the bartender and stepped outside, nearly colliding with Jasper. He steadied her with a hand on her arm, his touch lingering a moment too long. "You're in a hurry," he said, his smile teasing but his eyes sharp. "Find something new?" Clara pulled away, her hand brushing the locket in her pocket. "Maybe. You ever hear of Lila's locket?" Jasper's expression flickered just for a second. "Locket? Nah. But if it's tied to her, it's tied to Nathaniel. You're getting deep, Clara. Watch your step." She ignored the warning, her thoughts on the locket and the mirror. Back at the gray Mare, she went straight to the parlor. The mirror stood silent, its frame gleaming faintly. Clara pulled the locket from her pocket, holding it up to the glass. "Lila," she said softly, "I found this. Is it yours?" The mirror rippled, and Nathaniel's face appeared, clearer than before. His eyes locked on the locket, and for a moment, Clara swore she heard a note, a soft, aching hum, like a song caught in the wind. Then it was gone, and so was he. Clara's knees buckled, and she sank to the floor, the locket clutched in her hand. The hum had been real, Lila's voice trapped in the glass just as the journal said. She thought of the oak, the letter, Nathaniel's silent plea. Their story wasn't just about love, it was about something left undone, a promise broken. Clara stood, her resolve like iron. She'd find Lila's voice, free it somehow. But how? That night, she sat on her bed, the locket beside the photograph. The journal lay closed, but its words echoed. Her voice is in the glass. The bell tolled, faint and mournful, and Clara felt it in her bones. She was part of this now, woven into Nathaniel and Lila's story. The mirror wasn't just showing her the past, it was asking her to finish it. She blew out the candle, the darkness soft but heavy. Tomorrow, she'd return to the mirror, to Lila's locket, to the truth. For now, she let the night take her, the hum of a lost song lingering in her dreams. Clara woke with the locket still in her hand, its silver cool against her palm. The hum she'd heard in the parlor lingered in her mind, faint but undeniable, like a song half remembered. The journal's words, her voice as in the glass, felt like a map, guiding her deeper into Nathaniel and Lila's story. She dressed quickly, her movements sharp with purpose. The gray Mare was quiet, its silence heavier than usual, as if it knew she was closing in on something fragile, something true. She skipped the dining room, avoiding Jasper's inevitable questions. His warnings were starting to feel less like concern and more like a barrier, keeping her from the truth. Instead, she went straight to the parlor. The mirror stood as always, its glass gleaming in the soft morning light. Clara held up the locket, her reflection steady but her heart racing. "Lila," she said, her voice firm, "I heard you. I know you're there." The glass didn't ripple, didn't shift. She waited, her breath held, but the mirror stayed silent, mocking her with her own face. Frustration sparked in her chest, but she didn't look away. She opened the locket, the tiny portrait of the woman Lila, she was certain staring back. "Nathaniel's waiting for you," Clara whispered. "What happened?" For a moment, she thought she felt it, a faint vibration, like the hum from before, but softer, buried deep. Then it was gone. Clara lowered the locket, her hands trembling. The mirror wasn't ready to answer, not yet. She left the parlor and headed outside, needing air to clear her thoughts. The street was quiet, Willow Creek still waking under a pale sky. She walked to the saloon, hoping to find someone who knew more about Lila. The bartender was there, sweeping the floor. "You're up early," he said, leaning on his broom. "Still hunting that mirror's secrets?" Clara nodded, pulling the locket from her pocket. "Ever hear of Lila owning a locket like this?" The bartender squinted at it, his brow furrowing. "Can't say I have, but she was known for wearing something round her neck when she sang. Folks said it was a gift from her man." Clara's pulse quickened. "Nathaniel?" The bartender shrugged. "Could be. Never heard a name. She stopped wearing it after he passed. Broke her, they say. Stopped singing soon after." Clara thanked him and stepped back into the street, the locket heavy in her hand. It was Lila's, given by Nathaniel, a piece of their love now tangled in the mirror's mystery. She thought of the oak, the letter, the journal's cryptic messages. Lila hadn't just vanished, she'd left something behind. Back at the gray Mare, Clara found Mrs. Hargrove in the kitchen, chopping carrots with a rhythm that felt almost angry. "You knew Lila, didn't you?" Clara asked, her tone direct. Mrs. Hargrove's knife paused, her eyes flicking up. "Knew of her. Pretty thing, voice like honey. Broke a lot of hearts when she left." Clara leaned closer. "Left or disappeared? Nobody seems to know where she went." Mrs. Hargrove's jaw tightened. "Some folks don't want to be found. Let it be, girl." But her voice wavered, and Clara caught at a crack in her armor. She didn't press further, sensing Mrs. Hargrove was a wall she couldn't yet climb. Instead, she went to her room and pulled out the journal. A new entry waited, the ink fresh. She left her heart with him. "The glass holds it still." Clara's breath caught. The locket, Lila's voice, Nathaniel's face, they were all tied to the mirror, locked in a moment that refused to end. She thought of the hum, the way it had felt alive, like Lila herself was reaching out. That afternoon, Clara returned to the oak by the creek. The tree stood silent, its branches swaying gently. She knelt at its base, the locket in one hand, the letter to my dearest N in the other. "Lila," she said softly, "I'm trying to understand. What did you leave behind?" The air felt thick, like it was listening. She pressed the locket to the earth, half expecting something to happen, a sound, a sign. Nothing came, but the weight in her chest grew, as if the oak itself were whispering back. As dusk fell, Clara found Jasper on the porch, his whittling knife idle in his hand. He looked up, his eyes searching hers. "You're carrying something heavy," he said, his voice low. Clara sat beside him, the locket still in her pocket. "I found Lila's locket. It's tied to the mirror, to Nathaniel." "I heard her voice, Jasper." "Just for a moment." His expression shifted, a flicker of something surprise, maybe fear. "You're in deeper than I thought," he said. "That locket, it's more than a keepsake. You keep pushing, Clara. You might not like what you find." Clara met his gaze unflinching. "I'm not stopping." "They're trapped, Jasper. Nathaniel, Lila, they're caught in that mirror, and I think I'm supposed to help them." Jasper's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he stood, pocketing his knife. "Just be sure you're helping them, not yourself." His words stung, but Clara didn't respond. She watched him walk away, her resolve hardening. That night, she sat by her window, the locket in her hand. The bell tolled, soft and distant, like a heartbeat from another time. She thought of Lila's voice, Nathaniel's eyes, the oak's silent watch. The mirror was a cage holding their love, their pain. Clara wasn't sure how to free them, but she knew she was close. The locket was a key, the journal a guide. She blew out the candle, the darkness settling softly, but sleep was far off. The mirror waited, and she'd face it again, carrying Lila's heart with her. The morning light filtered through Clara's window, soft and gray, as if Willow Creek itself were caught in a dream. She woke with the locket's weight in her hand, its silver warmed by her skin. The hum of Lila's voice, faint but real, echoed in her memory, tying her tighter to the mirror's mystery. The journal's latest entry, she left her heart with him. The glass holds it still felt like a challenge, daring her to unlock what Nathaniel and Lila had left behind. Clara dressed, her resolve like a steady flame, and slipped the locket into her pocket. Today she'd find the next piece, no matter how deep she had to go. Downstairs the gray Mare was quiet, the dining room empty save for a faint trace of smoke from a dying fire. Clara avoided the parlor, the mirror's pull too strong for so early in the day. Instead, she headed to the storage room again, hoping to uncover more of Lila's story. The air was thick with dust, the boxes and crates a silent archive of forgotten lives. She sifted through yellowed papers and broken trinkets, her fingers brushing something soft, a folded piece of fabric tucked beneath a cracked teacup. It was a handkerchief, its edges frayed, embroidered with a single word, Lila. Clara's breath caught. She held it up, the delicate stitches catching the light. This was Lila's, another thread in the tapestry of her life with Nathaniel. She tucked the handkerchief into her pocket with the locket, her mind racing. The journal, the locket, the letter, now each piece felt like a step closer. But To what? She returned to her room and opened the journal, bracing herself. A new entry waited, the ink fresh. Her song is unfinished. Sing it for her. Clara's heart skipped. Sing? She wasn't a singer, not like Lila. But the words felt literal, urgent, like a task she couldn't ignore. She headed to the saloon, hoping to learn more about Lila's performances. The bartender was there, wiping down the counter. "You're a regular now," he said, his tone half amused. Clara pulled out the handkerchief. This was Lila's. "What can you tell me about her singing?" The bartender's eyes softened. She was magic up there. Sang ballads, mostly love songs, sad ones. Had folks weeping in their whiskey. Always wore that locket when she performed, like it gave her strength. After her man died, she tried singing once more, but her voice cracked. Never came back after that? Clara nodded, picturing Lila on the stage, her voice pouring out love and loss. Any songs she was known for? The bartender thought for a moment. One stuck with folks, the Willow's Lament. Slow, mournful thing about a lover who never returned. Fit her story, I reckon. Clara thanked him and left, the song's name echoing in her mind. Was this what the journal meant? Did she need to sing the Willow's Lament to free Lila's voice? Back at the gray Mare, she found Mrs. Hargrove sweeping the porch. "Ever hear of a song called the Willow's Lament?" Clara asked. Mrs. Hargrove's broom paused, her face unreadable. Old tune. Lila sang it, back when she was the talk of the town. Ain't heard it in years. She resumed sweeping, but her movements were stiff. Clara pressed gently. "What happened to her, really?" "Nobody says." Mrs. Hargrove's eyes flicked up, sharp. "Some say she left for the city. Others say she couldn't live without him. Don't matter now. Dead or gone, she ain't coming back." Clara's stomach twisted, but she let it go. Mrs. Hargrove was a locked door, and Clara didn't have the key yet. She went to her room, pulling out the locket and handkerchief. The journal's words burned. Sing it for her. She didn't know the song, but maybe the mirror did. She headed to the parlor, the locket in one hand, the handkerchief in the other. The mirror gleamed, its glass a silent challenge. Clara stepped close, her reflection steady. "Layla," she said, her voice soft but firm. "I found your handkerchief. I know about the Willow's Lament. Show me." The glass rippled, and Nathaniel appeared, his eyes locked on hers. The hum returned, stronger now, weaving into a melody slow aching, like a heart breaking. Clara's throat tightened as the notes filled the room, Lila's voice rising from the glass. It was the Willow's Lament, she was sure, though she didn't know the words. The song faded, and Nathaniel's lips moved, forming a silent plea. Clara leaned closer, her fingers brushing the locket. "I'll sing it," she whispered. "I promise." The mirror stilled, her own face staring back. Clara sank into a chair, her chest heavy. The song was real, Lila's voice trapped in the mirror with Nathaniel's face. But how could she sing it? She wasn't Lila, wasn't a performer. She thought of the oak, the letter, the locket, each piece, a part of their story, now hers to carry. She returned to her room, the melody lingering in her ears. She opened the journal again, hoping for guidance, but no new entry appeared. The task was clear, but the path was not. That evening she found Jasper in the dining room, his whiskey untouched. He looked up, his eyes weary. "You're still at it," he said, his voice low. Clara sat across from him. I heard Lila's song in the mirror, the Willow's Lament. I think I need to sing it. Jasper's brow furrowed. You're playing with fire, Clara. That mirror ain't just a story, it's a trap. You sure you want to keep going? Clara met his gaze, unflinching. I'm sure they need me to. Jasper sighed, leaning back. Then you better learn that song. Ain't nobody in town sings it anymore, but old Amos might know the words. He's got a memory like a steel trap, drunk or not. Clara nodded, a spark of hope igniting. Amos. She'd find him tomorrow. For now, she returned to her room, the locket and handkerchief beside her. The bell tolled, soft and distant, like a call to finish what was started. Clara closed her eyes, the melody of the Willow's Lament weaving through her dreams, pulling her closer to the mirror's heart. Clara woke to a faint melody in her mind, the strains of the Willow's Lament weaving through her dreams like a thread. The locket rested on the bedside table, its silver catching the dawn's first light. The journal's words, her song is unfinished. Sing it for her felt like a weight, pressing her forward. She wasn't a singer, but the mirror's call was clear, and Lila's voice, trapped in the glass, needed her. Today she'd find Amos and learn the song, no matter how daunting it felt. She dressed quickly, her hands steady despite the knot in her stomach. The gray Mare was silent, its creaks and sighs muted, as if waiting for her next move. Downstairs, the dining room was empty, the air heavy with the scent of old wood and dust. Clara stepped outside, the morning air sharp and cool. Willow Creek lay quiet, its streets bathed in soft light. She headed to the saloon, where Amos was likely to be, his whiskey-soaked memory her best chance at the song's words. The saloon was near empty, save for Amos in his usual corner, his hat tipped low. Clara slid into the chair across from him, her resolve firm. Amos, she said, keeping her voice gentle, I need your help. You know the Willow's Lament? Lila's song? Amos looked up, his eyes cloudy but sharp. That old tune? Ain't heard it in years. Why you want it? Clara leaned closer. I think it's tied to the mirror at the gray Mare, to Lila and Nathaniel. I need the words. Amos took a slow sip from his bottle, his gaze distant. Sad song, that one. 'Bout a girl waitin' for her love, only he never comes. Lemme think. He hummed a few notes, rough and unsteady, then spoke the words, his voice low and halting. By the willow I stand alone, my heart a heavy stone. He promised me the stars above, but left me with his love. Clara scribbled the lines in her notebook, her hand trembling. Amos continued, piecing together fragments of the song verses of longing, of a lover lost to time, of a promise broken under the oak. It was Lila's story sung in her voice, now Clara's to carry. Thank you, Clara said, her voice thick. Amos nodded, his eyes softening. You sing it, girl, you be careful. That song's got pain in it. Might stir something up. Clara left the saloon, the lyrics burning in her mind. She walked to the oak by the creek, needing its quiet strength. The tree stood as always, its branches swaying gently. She sat at its base, reading the words aloud, her voice unsteady but clear. The air felt thick, like it was listening, and for a moment she thought she heard an echo of faint hum, like Lila's voice joining hers. Back at the gray Mare, Clara found Mrs. Hargrove in the kitchen, peeling potatoes with a steady hand. You know the Willow's Lament, Clara said, not a question. Mrs. Hargrove's knife slowed, her eyes wary. Heard it a time or two. Lila's song. Why you a skin? Clara held her gaze. I'm going to sing it. For her. For Nathaniel. Mrs. Hargrove's face tightened, but she only nodded. You do what you gotta do, girl. Just don't expect it to end pretty. Her words were a warning, but Clara was past heeding them. She went to her room, pulling out the locket and handkerchief. The journal waited, and she opened it, half expecting a new entry. None appeared, but the silence felt heavy, like the mirror itself was watching. She practiced the song, her voice soft and uncertain, the lyrics weaving a story of love and loss. Each word felt like a step closer to Lila, to Nathaniel, to the truth locked in the glass. That evening, Clara found Jasper on the porch, his whittling knife idle. He looked up, his eyes searching hers. You got the song, didn't you? He asked, his voice low. Clara nodded, sitting beside him. Amos knew the words. I'm going to sing it, Jasper. In front of the mirror. His jaw tightened, and for a moment she thought he'd argue. Instead, he sighed. You're set on this, ain't you? All right, but I'm coming with you. That mirror's got a pull, and I don't trust it. Clara's chest warmed at his offer, though she didn't admit it. Fine, she said, standing. Tonight, then. They walked to the parlor together, the locket in Clara's hand, the lyrics in her heart. The mirror gleamed, its glass a silent challenge. Clara stepped close, Jasper at her side, his presence steady but tense. She took a breath, the words of the Willow's Lament rising in her throat. By the willow I stand alone. Her voice was soft, untrained, but it carried the weight of Lila's pain. The glass rippled and Nathaniel appeared, his eyes locked on her. The hum returned, Lila's voice weaving with Clara's, growing stronger. Clara's voice faltered, but she kept singing, the melody filling the room. Nathaniel's lips moved, forming words she couldn't hear. The locket grew warm in her hand, and the handkerchief, tucked in her pocket, felt heavy, like it was anchoring her to the moment. The song ended and the mirror stilled, Nathaniel's face fading. Clara's knees buckled, but Jasper caught her, his hand steady on her arm. You all right? He asked, his voice low. She nodded, though her chest ached. I felt her, she whispered. Lila. She's still here. They left the parlor, the air lighter but still charged. Clara sat on her bed, the locket and handkerchief beside her. The bell tolled, soft and mournful, like a farewell. She'd sung the song, but it wasn't enough, not yet. Lila and Nathaniel were still trapped, their story unfinished. Clara closed her eyes, the melody lingering, pulling her deeper into the mirror's heart. Tomorrow she'd try again. For them. The gray Mare felt alive that morning, its air thick with anticipation, as if it knew Clara stood on the edge of something vast. The melody of the Willow's Lament clung to her, its notes woven into her thoughts like a heartbeat. The locket rested heavy in her pocket, Lila's handkerchief folded beside it, both pulsing with the weight of a story half told. Clara dressed, her hands steady but her chest tight. Singing the song had stirred something in the mirror, but it wasn't enough. Nathaniel and Lila were still trapped, their voices silent, their eyes pleading. Today she'd push harder. She skipped breakfast, the dining room's emptiness a mirror to her focus. The journal waited in her room, but she didn't open it, afraid of what new command it might hold. Instead, she went to the parlor where the mirror stood, its glass gleaming like a frozen river. Clara held the locket and handkerchief, her reflection sharp, but her resolve sharper. "Lila, Nathaniel," she said, her voice low, "I sang for you. What's next?" The glass stayed still, but the air shifted, heavy with a presence she couldn't name. She waited, her breath shallow, but the mirror offered nothing. Frustration gnawed at her, but she didn't leave. She sat on the parlor's worn rug, the locket in her hand, and hummed the Willow's Lament softly. The notes felt alive, carrying Lila's pain, Nathaniel's regret. She closed her eyes, letting the melody guide her thoughts. The oak, the letter, the locket, the song, they were pieces of a promise broken, a love left hanging. But what tied them to the mirror? Why her? The hum grew louder in her mind, and for a moment she thought she heard words, "Find her," but they faded like smoke. Clara opened her eyes, her heart racing. She left the parlor and headed outside, needing to clear her head. Willow Creek was waking, its streets dusted with morning light. She walked to the saloon, hoping Amos might have more to share. He was there, slumped in his corner, his bottle nearly empty. "Back again?" he rasped, his eyes bleary. Clara sat across from him. "The song worked, Amos. I sang the Willow's Lament, and I felt Lila. But it's not enough. What else do you know about her? About Nathaniel?" Amos rubbed his face, his voice slow. "Told you what I know. Nathaniel loved Lila. She loved him. Planned to run off together, away from this cursed town. Something stopped him. He died in the mines, they say, but nobody found a body. Lila, she just faded. Some say she's still here, haunting the creek." Clara leaned forward. "Haunting how?" Amos shrugged. "Folks hear singing sometimes late at night down by the oak. Ain't nobody seen her, though." His words sent a chill through Clara. Singing by the oak. Lila's voice trapped in the mirror, echoing in the world. She thanked Amos and headed to the creek, drawn to the oak like a compass point. The tree stood silent, its branches heavy with time. Clara knelt at its base, the locket and handkerchief in her hands. "Lila," she whispered, "are you here?" The air felt thick, like it was holding its breath. She hummed the song again, her voice soft but clear. "By the willow I stand alone." The notes seemed to sink into the earth, and for a moment she heard it a faint echo, Lila's voice weaving with hers, mournful and clear. Clara's breath caught, her hands trembling. Lila was here, somehow tied to the oak, the mirror, the song. Back at the gray Mare, Clara found Mrs. Hargrove in the kitchen, her hands busy with dough. "You ever hear singing by the creek?" Clara asked, her tone direct. Mrs. Hargrove's eyes flicked up sharp. "Old stories. Folks hear what they want to hear. Wind, water, that's all it is." But her voice was too quick, her hands too tense. Clara pressed. "Lila's voice. People hear it, don't they? By the oak." Mrs. Hargrove's jaw tightened. "You're stirring up trouble, girl. Let the dead rest." But Clara saw the fear in her eyes, the crack in her usual gruffness. She returned to her room, pulling out the journal. A new entry waited, the ink fresh. She's waiting where it began. Bring her to him. Clara's heart pounded. The oak. It was where Lila had waited for Nathaniel, where their promise had broken. She thought of the locket, the handkerchief, the song pieces of Lila's heart left behind. Was she meant to bring them to the mirror? To Nathaniel? Clara's mind spun, but her resolve held firm. She'd go to the oak tonight under the stars and sing again. As dusk fell, Clara found Jasper on the porch, his eyes on the horizon. "You're not giving up, are you?" he said, his voice soft but heavy. Clara shook her head. "I heard her, Jasper. By the oak. Lila's still there, and I think I need to bring her to the mirror." Jasper's brow furrowed, but he didn't argue. "You're playing with things bigger than you, Clara. But if you're set, I'll go with you. To the oak, tonight." Clara nodded, grateful but wary. Jasper's concern felt genuine, but his secrets kept her on edge. That night, they walked to the creek, the locket and handkerchief in Clara's hands. The oak loomed in the moonlight, its branches like arms outstretched. Clara stood at its base, her voice rising with the willow's lament. The air hummed, Lila's voice joining hers, stronger now, full of longing. Jasper stood silent, his eyes wide. The song ended and the air stilled, but Clara felt it. Lila was close, her presence a whisper in the dark. The bell tolled, soft and mournful, and Clara knew the mirror was waiting. She'd bring Lila to Nathaniel somehow and finish their story. The moon hung low over Willow Creek, casting silver light on the gray Mare as Clara and Jasper returned from the oak. The air still hummed with Lila's voice, her song lingering like a promise kept but not fulfilled. Clara clutched the locket and handkerchief, their weight grounding her as the bell's faint toll echoed in the distance. The journal's words, "She's waiting where it began," bring her to him burned in her mind, a map to the mirror's heart. Tonight she'd face it, carrying Lila's presence with her. The parlor was dark, the mirror a pool of shadow save for a glint of moonlight on its frame. Jasper lit a lamp, its glow soft but steady, and stood by the door, his eyes wary. Clara stepped forward, the locket warm in her hand, the handkerchief soft against her fingers. "This is it," she whispered, more to herself than to him. She held up the locket, its silver catching the light. "Lila, I heard you at the oak. I'm here for you. For Nathaniel." The glass stayed still, but the air thickened, pressing against her skin. Clara began to sing the willow's lament, her voice low and unsteady at first, but growing stronger with each note. "By the willow I stand alone, my heart a heavy stone." The mirror rippled, and Nathaniel's face appeared, his eyes locked on her, brighter than before. Lila's voice joined hers, rising from the glass, a melody of longing and loss. The locket grew warmer, almost burning, and the handkerchief seemed to pulse, like a heartbeat. Clara's throat tightened, but she didn't stop, the song weaving a bridge between the oak and the mirror, between Lila and Nathaniel. As the final note faded, the glass shimmered, and for the first time, Lila appeared beside Nathaniel. Her face was soft, her eyes full of sorrow, but also hope. She reached for him, her hand trembling, and Nathaniel's lips moved, forming her name. Clara's breath caught, tears pricking her eyes. The locket opened in her hand, revealing Lila's portrait, now glowing faintly. The handkerchief fluttered to the floor as if released. The air hummed with their voices, a duet unfinished for too long, now whole. "Lila," Clara whispered, "you found him." The mirror pulsed, its light spilling into the room, warm and alive. Nathaniel and Lila's faces grew clearer, their hands almost touching through the glass. Clara felt a pull, like the mirror was drawing her in, but Jasper's hand on her shoulder steadied her. "Stay here," he murmured, his voice tense. She nodded, her eyes fixed on the couple in the glass. Their lips moved, speaking words she couldn't hear, but their eyes said enough love, regret, release. The light flared, bright and blinding, and Clara shielded her eyes. When she looked again, the mirror was still, reflecting only her and Jasper. Nathaniel and Lila were gone. The locket lay cool in her hand, its portrait faded, empty. The handkerchief rested on the floor, ordinary now, its weight lifted. The air felt lighter, the gray Mare's heaviness gone. Clara sank to her knees, her chest aching with relief and loss. "They're free," she whispered, her voice breaking. Jasper knelt beside her, his hand still on her shoulder. "You did it, Clara. You brought him together." His voice was soft, but there was a shadow in his eyes, like he'd seen more than he'd say. Clara looked at him, searching his face. "You knew more than you told me, didn't you?" Jasper's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "I've seen things in that mirror. Not them, but others. Never said nothing 'cause I didn't want to believe it. You made me believe." Clara stood, the locket and handkerchief in her hands. She opened the journal, half expecting a new entry, but the pages were blank, the ink's strange life gone. The bell didn't toll, its silence a farewell. She thought of the oak, the creek, the song, each piece a step to this moment. Lila and Nathaniel's story was finished, their love set free, but Clara felt changed, like she'd carried a piece of them with her. They left the parlor, the lamp's light fading behind them. Outside, the moon was high, Willow Creek quiet under its glow. Clara looked at Jasper, his face half-shadowed. "What now?" she asked, her voice soft. He smiled, a flicker of his old charm. "You tell me, Clara. You're the one who faced the mirror." She didn't answer, her thoughts drifting to the road beyond the town, to stories still untold. Back in her room, Clara packed her satchel, the locket and handkerchief tucked inside. The photograph of Nathaniel stayed on the table, his smile faint but at peace. She sat by the window, the night soft and still. The mirror was just glass now, its pull gone, but its story would stay with her. Lila's song, Nathaniel's eyes, they were hers now, woven into her own path. She closed her eyes, the melody of the willow's lament, a whisper in her heart, carrying her into sleep. The dawn broke soft over Willow Creek, its light spilling through Clara's window, like a gentle farewell. She woke with the memory of the mirror's glow, Nathaniel and Lila's faces fading into peace. The locket and handkerchief lay on her bedside table, now just keepsakes, their strange life gone. The journal was silent, its pages blank, and the bell hadn't tolled since last night's release. Clara felt lighter, yet a quiet ache lingered, as if she'd lost something of herself in setting them free. She dressed slowly, her satchel packed, but her thoughts unhurried. The gray Mare felt different, its air no longer heavy, its shadows soft. She headed downstairs, the dining room empty save for the faint scent of coffee. Mrs. Hargrove was in the kitchen, her hands busy with bread. Clara paused at the door. "I'm leaving today," she said, her voice steady. Mrs. Hargrove looked up, her eyes sharp but softened. "Figured you would. You stirred up enough ghosts." She hesitated, then added, "You did right by Em, though." "Not many would." Clara nodded, a flicker of warmth in her chest. "Thank you," she said, and meant it. She stepped outside, the morning air crisp against her skin. Willow Creek stretched before her, its streets quiet, its secrets settled. She walked to the saloon, needing one last piece before she left. Amos was there, his bottle untouched for once. "Heard you sang that song," he said, his voice gruff. "Felt something shift last night." "They gone?" Clara met his gaze. "They're free," she said simply. Amos nodded, a ghost of a smile on his weathered face. "Good. About time." She headed to the creek, drawn to the oak one final time. The tree stood as always, its roots deep, its branches still. Clara knelt at its base, the locket in her hand. "Lila, Nathaniel," she whispered. "I hope you're together now." The air was calm, no hum, no echo, just the soft rush of the creek. She stood, feeling the oak's quiet strength, and tucked the locket back into her pocket. It was hers to carry now, a reminder of what she'd done. Back at the gray Mare, she found Jasper on the porch, his whittling knife idle. He looked up, his hazel eyes catching the light. "Leavin', ain't you?" he said, his voice low. Clara nodded, sitting beside him. "Time to move on. But I need to know, why didn't you tell me everything about the mirror?" Jasper's jaw tightened, but his gaze was steady. "Seen too many folks get lost in it. Thought I could keep you from going too deep. Didn't work, did it?" He smiled faintly, and Clara couldn't help but smile back. "No, but I'm glad it didn't." They sat in silence for a moment, the town waking around them. "Where you headed?" Jasper asked finally. Clara looked to the horizon, where the hills met the sky. "Don't know yet. Somewhere with stories." Jasper nodded, standing. "You'll find them. Always do." He tipped his hat, a flicker of something respect, maybe more in his eyes, and walked away. Clara returned to her room, gathering her things. The photograph of Nathaniel stayed on the table, its edges curling with age. She left it there, a piece of Willow Creek she didn't need to take. The journal went into her satchel, its blank pages a quiet companion. She thought of Eleanor, the woman who'd written in it first, and wondered if she'd felt this same mix of relief and loss. The mirror was just glass now, but its story, Lila's song, Nathaniel's eyes would stay with her, woven into her own. She stepped outside, her boots kicking up dust as she walked to the edge of town. The stagecoach waited, its driver loading crates under the morning sun. Clara glanced back at the gray Mare, its weathered walls standing silent, no longer calling her. She thought of the oak, the creek, the mirror, each a piece of a story she'd finished. The locket rested in her pocket, cool and light, a keepsake of love set free. As the stagecoach rattled away, Willow Creek faded behind her, its hills blurring into the distance. Clara leaned back, her satchel at her side, the melody of the willow's lament a faint whisper in her mind. She didn't know where she was going, but she felt ready for new towns, new mirrors, new stories waiting to be told. The road stretched ahead, open and endless, and Clara smiled, her heart steady, carrying Nathaniel and Lila with her into the unknown. The stagecoach swayed gently, its wheels crunching over the dusty road as Willow Creek faded into a memory. Clara sat by the window, her satchel at her feet, the locket a quiet weight in her pocket. The melody of the willow's lament lingered, soft as a whisper, tying her to Nathaniel and Lila, even as the miles stretched between her and the gray Mare. The journal rested in her bag, its blank pages a reminder of the story she'd finished. But her heart felt restless, already seeking the next tale. Outside, the landscape shifted. Scrubland gave way to rolling hills, their crests touched by the morning sun. Clara's thoughts drifted to the mirror, its glass now ordinary, its secrets released. She wondered about Eleanor, the journal's first keeper, and whether she'd felt this same pull to move on, to chase stories that called from the shadows. The locket, the handkerchief, the oak, they were pieces of Willow Creek, but Clara knew they'd shape whatever came next, like stars guiding a night traveler. The stagecoach stopped at a small town, its name lost in the driver's gruff call. Clara stepped out, stretching her legs, the air warm and laced with the scent of hay. A weathered sign read Crow's Hollow, and the name sent a shiver through her, though she couldn't say why. The town was smaller than Willow Creek, its buildings leaning together like old friends, their paint peeling under the sun. A saloon stood at the corner, its doors swinging with the comings and goings of dusty travelers. Clara wandered toward it, her curiosity stirring. Inside, the air was thick with tobacco and low voices. She ordered a coffee, her eyes scanning the room. A woman at the bar, her hair gray and pinned tight, caught Clara's gaze. Passing through, the woman asked, her voice rough but kind. Clara nodded, sipping her coffee. Just stopped for a spell. "This place got any stories?" The woman's lips twitched, a shadow crossing her face. "Every town's got stories. Crow's Hollow's got more'n most. Ask about the lantern if you're curious." Clara's pulse quickened. "Lantern?" The woman leaned closer, her voice dropping. "Old tale. Lights up at midnight down by the old mill. Folks say it's tied to a girl who waited for someone who never came. Sound like your kind of thing?" Clara's hand brushed the locket in her pocket, her mind flashing to Lila and Nathaniel. Another story, another promise broken. She nodded, her voice steady. "Might be." She left the saloon, the woman's words echoing. The old mill wasn't hard to find, a crumbling structure by a dry creek, its wheel still under the weight of time. Clara stood before it, the sun high but the air cool in the mill's shadow. She didn't see a lantern, but the place felt heavy, like the oak had, like the gray Mare. She thought of the journal, wondering if it would speak again, but left it in her bag for now. Some stories needed time to show themselves. Back at the stagecoach, the driver called for passengers. Clara hesitated, her eyes on the mill. She could stay, dig into Crow's Hollow's secrets, or keep moving, let the road decide her path. The locket felt warm, a quiet nudge. She climbed aboard, but her thoughts stayed with the lantern, its light a flicker in her mind. The stagecoach rolled on, the hills rising and falling like a slow breath. Clara leaned back, her hand on her satchel, the journal's weight a promise of stories yet to come. Night fell, the stars sharp above the road. Clara dozed, the locket in her hand, the willow's lament, a faint hum in her dreams. She saw the oak, the mirror, then a new image, a lantern glowing gold, a girl's silhouette against the mill's broken walls. The vision faded as the stagecoach jolted, waking her. She looked out, the darkness soft but alive. Crow's Hollow was behind her, but its story wasn't. She'd circle back or find another town, another light, another song. The road was long, and Clara was ready, her heart open to the whispers of the unknown. The stagecoach rattled through the night, its rhythm a steady pulse beneath Clara's thoughts. The locket rested in her pocket, cool now, but its presence tethered her to Willow Creek, to Nathaniel and Lila, even as Crow's Hollow's lantern story flickered in her mind. The journal lay silent in her satchel, its blank pages waiting for a new tale to claim them. Clara leaned against the window, the stars sharp above the dark hills, her heart stirring with the promise of Crow's Hollow. She wasn't done with stories, not yet. The coach stopped at a crossroads, the driver's voice gruff as he called out, "Last stop for dawn." Clara stepped into the cool air, her boots crunching on gravel. The sign read Ashen Vale, a name that hung heavy, like fog over water. The town was small, a cluster of low buildings under a sky still clinging to night. A boarding house loomed nearby, its windows dim but welcoming. Clara checked in, her room plain but clean, the bed creaking under her weight as she sat, the locket in her hand. She opened the journal, half expecting its silence to continue, but a new entry waited, the ink fresh. The light burns for her. Follow it. Clara's breath caught. The lantern in Crow's Hollow, could the journal mean that? Or was Ashen Vale hiding its own light, its own story? She closed the book, her mind racing. The locket felt warm again, a quiet nudge, like Lila's voice urging her forward. Sleep was far off, so she stepped outside, the town quiet under the fading stars. Ashen Vale felt different from Willow Creek, its air sharper, its shadows deeper. Clara wandered toward the center of town where a stone well stood, its edges worn smooth by time. A faint glow caught her eye, a candle, flickering in a window across the street. The house was old, its paint chipped, but the light drew her closer. She knocked, the sound soft but clear in the stillness. An old man answered, his eyes weary but kind. "Lost are you?" he asked, his voice like dry leaves. "Not lost," Clara said, her hand brushing the locket. "Just looking. Heard any stories about a light in this town?" The man's face shifted, a shadow crossing it. "You mean the candle. Burns in the old church every night. Folks say it's for a woman who lost her way. You want to know more, talk to the preacher come morning." Clara nodded, thanking him, her pulse quickening. A candle, a woman, a loss, another thread, like Lila's song, waiting to be pulled. She returned to the boarding house, the journal's words echoing. The light burns for her. She thought of the lantern in Crow's Hollow, now this candle in Ashen Vale. Were they connected, or was the road weaving a tapestry of broken promises? She lay on the bed, the locket in her hand, and dozed, her dreams flickering with light, a lantern, a candle, the mirror's glow. Lila's voice hummed softly, joined by another, fainter, calling from the dark. Morning came, gray and cool, the town stirring slowly. Clara headed to the church, a small building with a sagging steeple. The preacher was there, sweeping the steps, his face lined but calm. "Heard you're a skin about the candle," he said before she could speak. Clara nodded, her hand on the locket. "What's its story?" The preacher leaned on his broom, his eyes distant. "Been burning for years since a woman named Sarah vanished. Loved a man, but he left for the war. Never came back. She lit a candle every night, waiting. Then she was gone, but the candle keeps burning." Clara's chest tightened. Sarah, waiting, like Lila at the oak. "Where's the candle now?" she asked. The preacher pointed inside. "Altar. Nobody touches it, but it never goes out." Clara stepped into the church, the air cool and heavy. The candle burned low on the altar, its flame steady, casting soft shadows. She stood before it, the locket warm in her pocket. "Sarah," she whispered, "I'm listening." The flame flickered, and for a moment she thought she heard a sigh, faint but real. She left the church, the preacher's words heavy in her mind. Sarah's candle, Lila's song, the lantern and Crow's Hollow, each a light, each a woman waiting. The journal was guiding her, or something was, tying her to these stories. She returned to the boarding house, pulling out the journal. No new entry, but the silence felt alive, like it was waiting for her to act. She thought of the locket, its portrait empty now, and wondered if Sarah had left something behind, a token, a song, a promise. As noon approached, Clara sat by the well, the town moving around her. A stagecoach would pass through soon, heading west. She could stay, dig into Sarah's story, or follow the road to Crow's Hollow, to the lantern's light. The locket felt warm, the journal heavy. She hummed the willow's lament, its melody blending with a new note. Sarah's sigh, the candle's glow. The road called, and Clara was ready, her heart open to the next story, the next light burning in the dark. The stagecoach rolled into the gray dawn, its wheels kicking up dust as Ashen Vale faded behind Clara. The locket rested in her pocket, its warmth a quiet echo of Sarah's candle still burning in her mind. The journal's words, the light burns for her. Follow, it felt like a compass, pointing her toward Crow's Hollow and its lantern, though Sarah's story tugged at her, unfinished. Clara leaned against the window, the hills blurring past, her satchel heavy with the journal's silent promise. She was chasing lights now, each one tied to a woman, waiting, like Lila, like Sarah. The coach stopped at a dusty outpost, the driver barking, "Crow's Hollow, 10 minutes." Clara stepped out, her boots crunching on dry earth. The town was as she'd glimpsed before, small, weathered, its buildings sagging under the weight of time. The old mill loomed on the outskirts, its silhouette sharp against the morning sky. Clara's pulse quickened, the woman's words from the saloon echoing. A lantern, a girl, a wait that never ended. She headed toward the mill, drawn by the same pull that had led her to the gray Mare's mirror. The mill was silent, its broken wheel creaking faintly in the breeze. Clara circled it, her eyes scanning for the lantern, but found only shadows and splintered wood. The air felt heavy, like the oak by Willow Creek, like the church in Ashen Vale. She touched the locket, its metal warm, and whispered, "I'm here. Show me." Nothing stirred, but the weight in her chest grew, as if the mill itself were watching. She sat on a fallen beam, the journal in her hands, and opened it. A new entry waited, the ink fresh. Her light is hidden. Speak her name. Clara's breath caught. Whose name? The girl from the lantern story? She closed the journal, her mind racing. She needed more, so she walked back to the saloon, its doors creaking as she entered. The same gray-haired woman was behind the bar, polishing glasses. "Back, are you?" she said, her eyes sharp. Clara nodded, leaning on the counter. "Tell me about the lantern. Who was the girl?" The woman's hands slowed, her gaze distant. Name was Mare. Loved a drifter, promised he'd take her away. Left her waiting at the mill, lantern in hand. Never came back. She vanished, but folks see that light at midnight, still burning. Clara's heart tightened. Mary waiting, like Lila, like Sarah. "Where's the lantern now?" she asked. The woman shrugged. "Nobody knows. Some say it's buried at the mill. Others say it's in the light itself. You're chasing ghosts, girl." Clara thanked her, her thoughts spinning. She returned to the mill, the journal's words speak her name, urging her on. The sun was high now, but the mill's shadow felt cool, heavy. She stood where the wheel met the earth and said, "Mary?" The air shifted, a faint hum rising, like Lila's song, like Sarah's sigh. Clara knelt, her fingers brushing the dirt, half expecting to find the lantern. Nothing but stones and dust. She stood, the locket warm in her pocket, and hummed the willow's lament, its melody blending with the hum. The sound grew stronger, and for a moment she saw it a flicker of gold, a lantern's glow, hovering near the mill's broken wall. It vanished, but Clara's resolve hardened. Mary was here, tied to this place, her light hidden but real. Back at the saloon, Clara found a man in a worn coat, his eyes sharp despite the whiskey in his hand. "Heard you're a skin about the lantern," he said, his voice low. Clara nodded. "Know anything about Mary?" He leaned closer. "Old story. She waited every night, lantern lit, till she couldn't no more. Some say she hid it, hoping he'd find it. Others say she cursed it, so he'd never rest. Check the mill's foundation, folks, say she left something there." Clara's pulse raced. A clue, like the locket, like the handkerchief. She returned to the mill as dusk fell, the sky bruising purple. The foundation was cracked, overgrown with weeds. Clara dug with her hands, the locket warm against her chest. Her fingers brushed metal, a small rusted lantern, its glass cracked but intact. She lifted it, her breath shallow. "Mary," she whispered, and the lantern flickered, a faint gold light pulsing within. The hum returned, stronger, a woman's voice weaving with it, full of longing. Clara's eyes stung, the weight of Mary's weight pressing against her. She sat by the mill, the lantern in her hands, the journal open beside her. No new entry, but the air felt alive, like Mary was close. Clara thought of Lila's song, Sarah's candle, now Mary's lantern, each a light, each a story of love left hanging. The locket grew warmer, as if urging her to act. She'd bring Mary's light to the surface, speak her name, finish her tale. The stagecoach would leave soon, but Clara wasn't ready to go. Crow's Hollow held her now, its lantern glowing in her heart, pulling her deeper into the dark. The stars hung heavy over Crow's Hollow, their light faint against the mill's shadowed silhouette. Clara stood by the broken wheel, the rusted lantern in her hands, its cracked glass glinting with a gold flicker that wasn't her own. The locket burned warm in her pocket, and the journal's words, "Her light is hidden." Speak her name echoed like a final command. Mary's hum, soft and aching, wove through the air, pulling Clara to the heart of another story. Tonight she'd finish it, for Mary, for herself, and for the road ahead. The mill felt alive, its creaks and sighs a chorus to the lantern's glow. Clara knelt at the foundation, the lantern steady in her grip. "Mary," she said, her voice clear in the still night. The hum grew stronger, a woman's voice rising, full of longing and loss. Clara opened the journal, its pages blank but warm, as if waiting. She thought of Lila's song, Sarah's candle, now Mary's lantern, each a piece of love left waiting, each a light she'd carried. The locket pulsed, urging her on. She stood, lifting the lantern high. "Mary, I see you," she said, her voice steady. "He didn't come, but I'm here. Let go." The lantern flared, its light spilling gold across the mill, warm and alive. Clara's breath caught as a figure shimmered in the glow, a young woman, her eyes soft but heavy, her hands clutching a ghostly lantern. Mary. Her lips moved, forming a name Clara couldn't hear, but her gaze was clear grief, hope, release. The hum became a song, wordless but piercing, like the Willow's Lament had been. Clara's throat tightened, but she didn't look away. The locket opened in her pocket, its empty frame glowing faintly, as if welcoming Mary's light. The journal trembled in her satchel, and when she glanced down, a new entry appeared, the ink fresh. "Her light is free. Carry it forward." The lantern's glow pulsed, and Mary's figure reached out, her hand brushing the air. Clara felt a warmth, like a touch, and the song swelled, then faded soft as a sigh. The lantern dimmed, its glass cool, Mary's presence gone. Clara sank to the ground, the lantern in her lap, her chest aching with relief and loss. The mill was quiet now, its weight lifted, like the gray Mare after the mirror. She thought of Nathaniel and Lila, their hands almost touching, of Sarah's candle burning steady. Mary was free, her light joined to theirs, a constellation of stories Clara had woven together. The locket cooled, its glow gone, but it felt lighter, like it had carried Mary's heart and let it go. She walked back to the saloon, the lantern in her hands, the journal silent but complete. The gray-haired woman was there, her eyes sharp in the lamplight. "You found it," she said, her voice low. Clara nodded, setting the lantern on the counter. "Mary's gone. Her light's free." The woman's lips twitched, a flicker of respect. Not many would have done that. "You leavin' now?" Clara glanced at the door, the road beyond. "Soon," she said, her voice soft but sure. At the boarding house, Clara packed her satchel, the locket and journal tucked inside. The lantern stayed behind, its glass dull but at peace, a piece of Crow's Hollow she didn't need to carry. She thought of the oak, the mirror, the candle, each a marker on her path, each a story finished. The journal was hers now, not Eleanor's, not Lila's, but Clara's, its blank pages waiting for new lights, new names. She sat by the window, the stars fading into dawn, and hummed the Willow's Lament, its melody blending with Mary's song, Sarah's sigh. Morning came, the town stirring under a pale sky. Clara walked to the stagecoach stop, her boots kicking up dust. The driver was there, loading crates, his voice gruff. "Westbound, last call." Clara glanced back at Crow's Hollow, the mill a faint shadow on the horizon. She thought of Ashen Vale, Sarah's candle, and wondered if she'd return, but the road pulled her forward, its promise stronger. The locket rested cool in her pocket, the journal a quiet weight in her satchel. As the stagecoach rolled away, Clara leaned back, her eyes on the hills. The melody of the Willow's Lament lingered, joined by new notes Mary's light, Sarah's flame, a hum of stories yet to come. She didn't know where the road led, but she felt whole, her heart steady. The locket, the journal, the song, they were hers, tying her to Lila, to Mary, to every light she'd freed. Clara smiled, the horizon open, ready for the next town, the next story, the next whisper in the dark.